Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Packers Unscripted from Packers.com. I am Mike Spofford. He is my partner in crime, Wes Hodkowitz. We're coming to you here from our studios at Lambeau Field West. The Packers on Sunday Night Football. They blow out the Minnesota Vikings 37-10. And in the process, clinch the number one playoff seed for the NFC because the Cowboys had lost earlier in the day. I want to get to the playoff scenarios and where all that stands a little bit later. But for this show, and I don't want us to start sounding like a broken record, but I think we have to start with what Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams are doing. I mean, how that looked on Sunday night, what those two guys are doing is incredible. What really struck me on Sunday night was just the way in which they continue to make it look so easy.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers with another 100-plus passer rating in sub-zero temperatures, or sub-zero wind chills, and Davante Adams getting the double-digit catches, over 100 yards, gets in the end zone again. And it looks too easy, and this game is not that easy.
It is not. And the plays that they make, Mike, Packer fans are so spoiled when you look at the NFL and just the amount of jaw-dropping plays week to week to week Rodgers, for one, makes on his own, but two, that combination of him and Adams.
Yeah.
It's special. You might have those a few times in a season in other NFL cities. Here, it happens literally every Sunday. But I want to take this in a different direction on you too, though, Mike, because we've talked a lot about Aaron Rodgers making a compelling bid for that fourth straight MVP. We talked a lot about Davante Adams. It would be an absolute travesty if he doesn't actually be a unanimous All-Pro. I know last year someone voted for Cole Beasley for some reason, and he wasn't, but that he wasn't actually a unanimous all 50 votes All-Pro at receiver. But it was something that Davante Adams said after the game that really hit home with me. Davante talked about almost 18 minutes, which for a post-game interview is about as long as it gets for anyone not named Aaron Rodgers or Matt LaFleur.
Right.
And in the middle of it, when he was talking about some of the things that him and Rodgers have accomplished together, Davante took that car and hit the off-ramp. And what he said was, it's also about the guys in that locker room and the way that offense plays together with all 11 parts and the selflessness for guys to understand if we're going to play winning football, this offense in a lot of occasions has to run through Rodgers. It has to run through number 17. Aaron Jones is a guy that in a lot of cities probably is a 250 touch type player. A.J. Jones, I think, can show you week after week after week, this is a guy that can carry the ball 300 times a year, no problem. And he's going to be able to get you production. Marquez Valdez-Scantling has had some huge games, and he's had games like Sunday where it was one catch for 3 yards. Allen Lazard, the list goes on and on and on. In some places, that could be a problem for people. In Green Bay, they understand what everybody's role is, and they embrace that role. And in this particular case, when you have a generational type talent like Aaron Rodgers, and you have a guy that could very well go down on that receiver Mount Rushmore here in Green Bay, maybe right alongside Don Hudson in Davante Adams, you want to ride those horses. And for the Green Bay Packers for the last 3 seasons, it's led to an incredible amount of winning and a lot of records as well for those two players.
Yeah, I was just blown away, and I know we see it on a regular basis, but there was something about Sunday night with the conditions, under the lights, the temperatures were in the single digits, the wind chills were below zero. It's not supposed to be that simple, and yet the back shoulder throws, the teardrop throws down the sideline, that sort of the drop in the bucket type of throws. I mean, it felt like it was one after another, and they were running around out there on the frozen tundra as though it was a 70-degree day in September. In a preseason game or something, and I'm not disparaging the Minnesota Vikings defense. I know they've had an up and down season and all that, but a couple of those back shoulder throws were they were absolutely guarded as closely as you could possibly guard them, and that ball is still fitting into the tightest of windows with Adams snatching it with his hands at absolutely the last possible millisecond to not give away to the defender that the ball is coming. I mean, the timing and the precision of it in those conditions absolutely floored me. And
Yeah.
and again, I'm sorry if I'm making our show like a broken record that we talk about this every week, but I think there's something about that particular game Sunday night and what they did and everything that it encompassed that was different and special compared to what we've seen before.
Offensively, for the Minnesota Vikings, I have a lot of questions. It seemed to me like Minnesota, in some regards, didn't want to really even be there. That's the way it felt.
Yeah.
I tip my cap to their defense, though, Mike. It's been a much maligned defense this year. That secondary, everybody talks about how they don't have, the horses that they had in the past. Cam Dantzler doesn't play in this game.
Right.
I actually thought Chris Boyd played a pretty good game. I was watching Harrison, Smith basically run laps around the field, trying to get on the back end, trying to cover the slot, trying to get over to where Davante is. And Green Bay and the cat and mouse game they played, specifically in that second quarter, was just incredible to watch. I mean, by and large, Minnesota did a good job against Davante Adams. And he had 11 catches for 136 yards and a touchdown. But when he got going, man, they had few answers to stop him.
Yeah.
And ultimately that led to him now being 22 yards shy of Jordy Nelson's franchise record for single-season receiving yards. He broke his own record for single-season catches, now at 117. And then suddenly, not that he's going to be challenging, the record that he shares with Sterling Sharp for single-season touchdowns, but suddenly this guy that was having an issue getting into the red zone earlier this season now has 11 touchdowns on the year.
Yeah.
Davante Adams is one of a kind, man, and that synergy he has with Aaron Rodgers, it's unlike anything we've seen.
Yeah, the numbers that he's putting up this year, and you mentioned the double-digit touchdowns. I believe that's either the fourth or fifth time in his career that he's reached double-digit touchdowns now. Pretty incredible. And with regard to me, I take nothing away from a guy like Jamar Chase in Cincinnati who's having an absolutely phenomenal rookie year. But the two All-Pro receivers on the first team in the NFL are Cooper Kupp and Davante Adams.
Yes.
I just don't see how that goes any other way. And whether it's supposed to be unanimous or not, I guess I'm not going to get too hung up on that. But those two guys, Jamar Chase has had a phenomenal season, and he and Joe Burrow are elevating Cincinnati into that contender conversation in the AFC. But Cooper Kupp and Davante Adams have done it every week all season long.
And I don't think I would have cared as much about the All-Pro if it wouldn't have been just such an egregious thing to have Cole Beasley ran. Which, by the way, that vote.
No, you're absolutely right.
That vote ended up making Cole Beasley, I think, an All-Pro. I think he was a second-team All-Pro last year because of that vote.
Yeah.
But be that as it may, Chase is an exceptional player. I mean, my goodness, what he did against Kansas City, give that guy credit. But in terms of the receiving position in and of itself, Kupp and Adams right now are the gold standard.
Yes.
The way they can run the entire route tree, their instincts, their ability to play any of the positions that are involved with the skill position player. Those two guys, watching them work and having a chance in recent weeks to watch Kupp more and more, you really see a lot of parallels in their game, and especially in Kupp's case, being able to develop that chemistry in year one with Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, well, a couple other things to get to here from this big victory for the Green Bay Packers. One is that we had talked about it all week long, the keying on Dalvin Cook and not letting him take control of this football game. And then lo and behold, we find out on Friday that Kirk Cousins goes on the COVID list, and the Vikings have to substitute Sean Mannion. And, hats off to the Packers defense. Dalvin Cook held to 13 yards on 9 carries, also had 0 yards on 3 receptions. So 12 touches and just 13 yards for Cook. And that's a heck of an effort by the Packers defense. But that unit also just didn't really have to worry about Minnesota's passing game because Sean Mannion gave it everything he had on a difficult night in difficult conditions. But that Minnesota passing game, even with Justin Jefferson, but also without Adam Thielen, was just never a threat to this Packers defense. And then with them never really getting Dalvin Cook going, the whole game just became a foregone conclusion.
And I have a lot of respect for what Matt LaFleur and Joe Barry did in this game, because they didn't disrespect Minnesota's offense. They did. If you always say every week, like fans always like to ask in the insider inbox, hey, is this a trap game, or are they overlooking this opponent? The Green Bay Packers respected the Vikings for everything they could be with or without Kirk Cousins on the field. But by doing that, they also didn't get outside themselves, and they just kind of dominated an opponent they should dominate in the fashion that was actually, that corresponded to the performance. You didn't see them cheating guys up. You didn't see them just running base packages in the entire game. They incorporated the dime. The situations that called for specific packages, they ran those packages, and they asked their guys to execute. I actually think this is a really important game for Green Bay from a defensive standpoint, because I thought it allowed them to get in and out of their base nickel, penny, and dime packages with more fluidity. That was where we'd seen some of the issues with the communication in recent weeks. That was the most unified that dime seemed this year with Kevin King in that role. There was even the one where they kind of had King mugging up front with Devondre Campbell, teasing a blitz, kind of more true, nickel type looks. The Green Bay Packers have a really talented defense, and as we'll probably talk about at some point, they could potentially be getting reinforcements back here for the postseason. But I just felt like they kind of needed to get their swagger back a little bit, and this was the game to do it. The fact that Dalvin Cook only carried the ball 9 times, it is what it is. That's the game plan that they went with. But the fact they only gave up 13 yards on those carries and not giving him extra additional room to breathe, that was my main takeaway from this game. The Packers won up front, and they dominated.
Yeah, I think the point that you made with regard to the changing of the personnel packages and the communication and everything being smoothed out, we saw some issues with that, with the Packers defense in recent weeks, and that did seem to get straightened out. I went through the defensive film, my What You Might Have Missed segment. I focused on the coverage of Eric Stokes, because it really was impressive what he was doing. He certainly got his share of Justin Jefferson in this game, and Stokes is playing some really, really good football for the Packers right now. But with regard to the communication, there was one play I saw, I think it was when the Vikings were in the red zone or close to the red zone or something, and Chandon Sullivan got kind of mixed up where he was on the wrong side.
Yeah.
The tight end was on
the
the other side, and he had to chase a guy. But other than that one instance, it felt like everything the Packers wanted to do on offense was implemented and it was executed smoothly, and that's what you like to see with where this team is heading into the postseason.
And I'm so glad you brought that up, because what also stood out to me is, okay, after the play happened, they get the guy down. Watching the defense come back together, watching Chandon and Rasul come back together, kind of tap each other on the helmet and get on to the next one.
Yeah.
That was my biggest takeaway from that, is that, that was, you gave one up there.
Yeah.
But they found a way to rally back. That's a really, really salient point.
Yeah. The other thing we saw that will be very interesting to monitor here going forward is a very under-the-radar signing. The Packers pick up David Moore. They signed him to the practice squad. He'd been released from the Broncos practice squad. He's a wide receiver just a couple of months earlier. Packers bring him in, sign him to the practice squad, elevate him for game day with Amari Rodgers on the COVID list, and all of a sudden, bang, this guy. Well, first, it looked like he had drawn a penalty for interference to catch a punt. The officials picked up that flag, and I still don't understand why they did. But then later on, he returns a punt 21 yards, which becomes the Packers' longest punt return of the season. 15 yards get tacked on for a late hit out of bounds. Suddenly it looks like, do the Packers here have their, the 2019 Tyler Ervin, this late addition to the special teams in David Moore to help out here? It looks like he could make an impact.
I'll tell you what, a couple things here. One, I was driving into work today. I was talking to my friend Scott Vency, my former coworker at the Press Gazette.
I know him well.
And we got talking about the game a little bit, and I just casually brought up David Moore, and Scott goes, wait, the Seahawk? The guy that was with the Seahawks? I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, since when does he play for the Packers? I was like, well, since Thursday.
Since Thursday, yeah.
And but I mean, that's the season. That's the way this thing's gone.
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers even mentioned in this post-game interview, he met Moore on the sideline. And he's like, yeah, he had a nice nice punt return for us. 21 yards, that also doubled as both the Green Bay Packers' longest punt return of the season and the longest that Moore's had in his career. Listen, Mike, I almost equated it. It was sort of like the Pepto-Bismol a little bit of the punt return game there. He just seemed to really alleviate, some of those issues. I mean, there just was a lot more comfort with him back there, and it was just one performance. He's got to, be able to string this together. But what if you and I and everyone, coaches, fans, everybody's talked about this, they just needed more consistency from their special teams. And with Moore, he didn't dance under the ball. He tracked it well. He didn't seem to be panicky under pressure. I give the Jammers a lot of credit. They gave him some room in which to work.
He did have some room to work.
It was by far the best punt return performance of the season, and it put him up there for one of the best special teams outings of the year. Mason Crosby, 5 touchbacks, 4 extra points, 3 field goals. They found ways to be consistent, and that's all they're asking for them here. They're not asking for Devin Hester. They're asking to get the ball back to Aaron Rodgers with as favorable field position as possible, and they did their job on Sunday night.
Yeah. One rough punt from Bojo, and then also a shaky hold on that first field goal, but he recovered, got it down. Mason was able to make the kick, but we're definitely seeing some progress there on special teams. Before I forget, Wes, I'll take care of our sponsor business here. Sirius XM NFL Radio delivers hard-hitting analysis and up-to-the-minute NFL news that true football fanatics need 24/7, 365. And at Cousin Subs, we have something for everyone, like our Wisconsin cheese curds, mac and cheese, golden fries, and creamy shakes, all paired with your favorite sub or sub in a bowl. Cousin Subs, we believe in better. All right. The Packers clinched the number 1 seed in the NFC playoffs. The Cowboys had lost to the Cardinals earlier on Sunday afternoon, so the Packers took the field on Sunday night. They took care of business. They have the 1 seed, which comes with it the first-round bye, home field advantage, everything that the Packers also had last year. But there's still 1 regular season game left to play. So there are a lot of questions now. How do the Packers go about this game in Detroit in Week 18, where the win or the loss doesn't impact your playoff implications at all? And Matt LaFleur suggested on Sunday night, reiterated on Monday, they're going to prep and play the starters in this game. He does not want to give healthy players a week off now and then have the playoff bye and essentially then set up a scenario where from the Minnesota game to the divisional playoff game, it's 3 weeks essentially between games. That being said, it doesn't sound like the starters are necessarily going to play the entire game in Detroit. So there is a little bit of a treat this like a preseason game kind of thing in a way, the way it's sounding at least right now early in the week. And the other factor that's going on here too, as you had alluded to before, is some of these injured guys, whether we're talking about David Bakhtiari, Jair Alexander, Randall Cobb, are these guys going to be back for the playoffs? Would they potentially play against the Lions to get their feet wet, so to speak? It's maybe not as big an issue for Cobb because he's only been out like a month or a little over a month, but obviously Alexander's been out since week 4. Bakhtiari has not played yet this season. We don't know how this is going to go, but there's a lot to consider. There's sort of a lot of balls being juggled in the air, so to speak, by Matt LaFleur and his coaching staff and the medical staff to figure out the best approach here between now and when the Packers will play that divisional playoff game in a few weeks.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about anything as it relates to the injury front. Obviously, Matt LaFleur's played it pretty close to the vest here, especially in the last 2 weeks. But I'll say this. I mean, the way that Aaron Rodgers was speaking about Randall Cobb, one, obviously it appears that Cobb is pretty close to returning. Rodgers even said, if that would have been a playoff-type game, he maybe would have even been back out there. What that really tells me, though, and this is the biggest thing, is that core injury, obviously, it wasn't too significant. And what we've learned more and more with these core muscle injuries, a lot of times, Mike, it's almost kind of like an MCL in some regards where you just got to kind of go in there, get the thing stitched up, and just work your way back. So obviously Cobb being able to at least be cleared to be back on the field 1 month after that to be able to return to practice in a padded session last Thursday, a very big positive for him. The other 3, it's going to be really interesting. And Josh Myers certainly trying to come back from that knee injury as well. We'll see where things were at with him. He's actually been in the rehab group now the last few weeks, but Jair Alexander's practicing. David Bakhtiari was not practicing last week. We'll see if he practices this week. And then obviously Zadarius Smith. I know there was some stuff said about him being back in town. We'll see what happens there. The way I look at this is the Green Bay Packers have made themselves the top seed in the NFC, the top dog, the team that should be favored to represent this conference in the Super Bowl without a 5-time All-Pro left tackle, without an All-Pro cornerback, and certainly when you look at what happened with Elton Jenkins and all these other guys they've lost along the way.
Bobby Tunyon.
Robert Tunyon, incredible. I mean, they still managed to overcome it and put themselves in this position. If you get back as a Darius Smith and he can give you 15 snaps in an NFC Championship game or 15 snaps in a Super Bowl, what a boost that could give you. If you can get back Jair Alexander for a playoff run, if you can get back David Bakhtiari and he's ready and the medical staff feels good about that knee. Rodgers equated it to 2013. And when him and Randall Cobb both came back for that regular season finale against Chicago.
Yeah, they've both been out for a couple months at that point.
Cobb breaks his freaking leg. In Baltimore.
Yeah.
Rodgers dealing with the collarbone, 2 months of questions about when he would be back. Both of those guys get back, and he said you could see the jolt it gave the team because it's like, hey, we can do this. We can win this game. We can go to the Super Bowl for crying out loud.
Yeah.
This team at 13 wins, could be 14. We'll see what happens. Doesn't really matter. There's some energy here, and especially if you get those type of all-pro type players back down the stretch, there's no better way to make a Super Bowl run.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a storyline that's going to be monitored not only this week but during the playoff bye and then leading up to that divisional game. What's going on with these guys who have been on the injured list and been out? Also been some more guys added to the COVID list. David Moore, who we were just talking about, the return man being one of them. Of course, now with all the changes of the rules, guys can come back from that so much quicker. So hopefully they're healthy and feeling well, and they'll get cleared, much like many of their teammates did over this past week. One other thing I want to talk about before we go, just with regard to where things sit in the NFC playoff picture. First off, there's only one playoff spot available.
Yep.
And that essentially comes down to either the 49ers or the Saints. The 49ers are playing the Rams. If the 49ers win, they are in as a wild card. If they lose, if the Rams win that game, then the Saints can get that last playoff spot by getting a victory in their final game. What's really interesting about this, though, is that if the 49ers win and get that last spot, the loss by the Rams in that scenario really throws the seeding and everything kind of up for grabs in seeding the 2 through 5 spots, because if the Rams lose, the Cardinals could steal back that NFC West division title and drop the Rams all the way to the 5 seed, whereas right now, if the Rams win, they get the 2 seed, and they are the one that is right behind Green Bay. So between the Rams, the Cowboys, the Buccaneers, and the Cardinals, everything with regard to who's going to be in the 2 through 5 slots is very much up in the air.
Well, this is what I love. And Mike, you and I were talking about it for weeks. This is why I felt like the bye was the biggest reason you want to get it this particular year. Yes, you want to have home field advantage. Yes, you want to be able to play in Lambeau Field. Aaron Rodgers has pontificated quite a bit on what that value is when it's 20 degrees out and teams don't want to be here. But it really also comes down, in my respect, to I don't know if you really want to face the Philadelphia Eagles right now. I don't know if you really want to face the San Francisco 49ers. Some of these teams, the way they've kind of come on, they didn't make division title type runs, but they're bona fide. I mean, they actually are playoff caliber teams that can beat top teams.
No question.
I have real questions about how many consecutive games the 49ers, Eagles, in some regards the Cardinals can win.
Right.
But they can knock off anybody in that wild card round.
Yep.
So that's where I think this thing gets really dangerous. I don't think there's anyone truly limping in right now at this stage. I think you got a lot of teams that feel pretty good about their chances in a wide open bracket. The AFC, a 5-win team or 5-loss team, is going to be the number 1 seed. I mean, it is incredible the way that this thing is sorted out.
Yeah, and I'm sure I know you're thrilled about this. I just have to point out that for all of our consternation previously, there will not be an 8-9 sub-500 team
Thank God.
in the playoffs.
Thank God we have 14 teams in the playoffs.
So
and there's no losers.
At worst 9-8. At worst 9-8 will be a playoff team, and very possible that all the teams in the playoffs this year could have 10 wins. Just Just saying.
Yep.
Just saying. Wes.
No, and that's great. That's awesome.
I'm joking with you because I know I'm trying to get you riled up.
Here's what I can't figure out yet.
About all this 18-week and extra team in the playoffs thing. But anyway, we're running short on time, so we'll let it go for today.
We'll let it go. I got one final thing I want to say.
Okay, all right.
I'm just curious what you think about this, and then we'll let Marv go to lunch. Okay, so do you think I'm gonna be upset when a 7 seed ends up winning this? More upset about the 7 seed winning a Super Bowl, or more upset about the 7 seed actually being in the playoffs at some point when there inevitably will be a 7-10 or an 8-9 team in the playoffs?
I think, I mean, honestly, for me, it comes down to the fact that in this league, that say a team, whether you're talking 7, 10, or 8 and 9, and they squeak in as a 7 seed, that team could, because anything can happen any given week, as we know, that team could knock off a 13-4 2 seed that just has a bad day, like in the first round, when in the previous system that 13-win 2 seed has a bye and doesn't have to play a team like that. That's where, to me, things will get kind of annoying, frankly. And I mean, we've seen, in the NHL, these 8 seeds, knock off the 1 seed. Well, there is something that doesn't feel quite right about that, but at the same time, that's a best of 7 series in those sports, right? In the NFL, in football, it's a one-shot deal, and I mean, we'll see. Your point, though, I agree with you that the way the San Francisco 49ers are playing, now they have a very tough game to try to beat the Rams and get into the playoffs, but the way the Niners are playing, the way the Eagles are playing, especially the way the Eagles are running the football, a ground game travels in the playoffs. I don't care where you play. I don't care how hostile the environment is when you're a road team. Those types of things, it will make for, I think, a very interesting wild card weekend in the NFC. Even if you're going to have 9 and 10 win teams going up against these 12 and 13 win teams, it's definitely going to be an anything can happen type of weekend. Yeah,
and the Eagles are really fun. I would like to see them beat somebody though. Like, that's the thing. I mean, their strength of victory this year isn't great. I mean, they've beaten teams they've had to beat to be in this position. So, but yeah, again, with their run defense, the way that they're running the ball offensively, and Jalen Hurts doing what he's doing, it's gonna be a difficult team to out.
Yeah, well, we'll be able to talk a lot more about that next week as well, and we'll have another show on Thursday to preview the game coming up against the Lions. But for now, we're going to call it a wrap on this edition of Packers Unscripted. Be sure to follow all of our coverage of the team all week long. We've got everything for you on Packers.com. For Wes, I'm Mike. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time.